Fish catch the bait, bait
Well,
catch
hey,
the fish.
listen.
Fish don't catch the bait catches the fish.
Listen, September 10th. You know what that means? Party at my place tomorrow for September 11th.
Big day tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, but today's a big day too, right? For you,
Today is
Is
a
it?
big day. That is true. Yes.
You gonna drop numbers on these folks? Or you're just gonna tell them it's your birthday?
Let's just say that it is my birthday. We don't need to get into
Semantics here with Blake's age, I guess, right?
what age I am.
You're pretty old now, right?
That seems a little personal. So once again, it is my birthday, ladies and gentlemen. So yes, thank you for that. It feels good to still be here, man. Still feels good to still be kicking. I will say I am older than 27, so I made it past the 27 club. So
congratulations.
We're still hanging in there, man. And after a very wild ride, a lot of those rides with both of you, we're all still here. And I think at the end of the day, that's what matters the most, more than my age. So
I don't know. I think the age is pretty important.
All right. Well, today we are reviewing, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Totally Biased Music. It's Blake, Anthony, and Trey. And today we're reviewing Revolver, which was Trey's album pick, and Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox Story, which was Anthony's movie pick. So, Trey, tell us a little bit about Revolver. Your name is Big Beatles guy, so tell us how you feel about the Beatles, why this was your choice. Just give us a little background.
Yeah,
brother.
absolutely. So first off, I love the Beatles. I think they're in the top 3, probably best bands of all time. They contributed numerous amounts of contributions to the world of pop music and to the world of music in general.
The zeitgeist.
The zeitgeist. That was the word I was looking for. Thank you. So the reason that I chose Revolver specifically is because a couple reasons. One, it's my favorite Beatles album. I've been listening to this album consistently, probably at least once a week or so, since I was in high school. Two, Revolver marked a big change for the Beatles as far as recording, taking the studio very seriously and having enough time to really put thought into the albums that they recorded within the studio, being able to kind of break through and use a lot of different studio techniques. It's also probably the first psychedelic rock album ever made. This album is heavily influenced by LSD. And the Beatles took LSD for the first time in 1965. This album was recorded in the summer of 66. So basically what happened was the Beatles decided to quit playing music publicly live in early 66. And then they had about 3 months off in between doing anything else to create this record, which 3 months doesn't sound like a lot of time now. But back then, that was a ton of time for pop bands to be able to make art. So this is a big time art record, in my opinion, the first psychedelic record. And we've reviewed a lot of different albums that have been influenced by the use of LSD on this podcast. And as the great Bill Hicks once said, if you hate drugs, go to your record collection and throw all your records away, because all those motherfuckers were real high on drugs.
Real high.
And the Beatles were kind of the first people to ever do that in a pop sense. So I know that Blake is not the biggest Beatles guy. I don't really know Anthony's opinion about the Beatles. I'm hoping that Blake was able to maybe enjoy some parts of this. I'm sure there's some parts that he didn't enjoy. And I'm really excited to talk about some of the studio techniques they used, talk about the use of sitar in the record brought to us by George Harrison and Ravi Shankar, and talk about just a bunch of different stuff about this album and some of the lore that comes with it.
So I noticed you're using the word pop a lot. Do you consider them more of a pop band than a rock band?
Well, they are much more of they kind of meld, they mesh the worlds. Yeah. They bridge the gap of what pop music was back then and what pop music could become and what it is now. And by pop, I just mean more so like it's available for the masses to consume, not like, it's just some little dinky thing that was put together by a neighborhood group of guys with like a Parlophone recording record. That's what pop, when it comes to the Beatles, that's what the word pop means. It doesn't mean pop in the same way that we think of like, Sabrina Carpenter or Taylor Swift or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, they're a band.
Yeah, I feel that.
They're four instruments.
Yeah, true. Anthony, what were your thoughts and what are your thoughts on the Beatles?
Yeah, so I didn't grow up with the Beatles. I didn't, when back in my downloading days, trying to figure out what was an actual Beatles album versus a compilation in my mind, at 15, 16, 17, it was just too much. And I was kind of diving into other lanes of music. So I probably didn't listen. The first album I listened to was Sergeant Pepper's, and that was definitely in college, probably like my third year in college. And that turned me on in a whole different direction from the Beatles. From like an experimental, from like a house band, and just like an interesting sound. Again, similar to the Grateful Dead, you hear about these bands just over time. They have a big lore about them. The Beatles are a huge one. And when I listened to the music, it caught me by surprise. So I'm a fan of the Beatles, for the record. I had a good time listening to this album. I knew they were overdue to come to the podcast, and I'm glad Trey, is doing them justice and bringing them to this. I know a little bit about some of the techniques that were done throughout this album. I know it was a lot of experimentation, and in the studio work, it translates, when you're listening to this album through headphones. So I highly recommend doing that if anyone listening hasn't done that yet. Before we go any deeper, Trey, I got a question. Is there a documentary specifically made for the making of Revolver? Or is it more...
There's not one specifically made for the making of Revolver. Like recently, that documentary about that Get Back documentaries about the making of Let It Be, which is like kind of when they were breaking up. That's what just came out about a year ago or so on Disney Plus. Watch Disney Plus.
Brought to you.
Gotcha. Shameless plug.
But the eight days a week, is that just like the history of the Beatles? Because
yeah. That's not specific about Revolver.
Gotcha. Good deal. Well, yeah. So again, had a great time listening to this. I was pretty familiar with a lot of the songs already, and you can kind of get a little notion of who influences which song. But excited to go deeper. So glad you picked this one, Trey.
Thank you.
I will say I went into it with an open mind, which is what I told you guys I was going to do. And I was pleasantly surprised in the fact that I found it much more digestible than I thought I would. I was thoroughly entertained by a lot of songs. There were a number of songs I did not enjoy that could not end quick enough. But apart from that, I mean, there's definitely some gems on here, man, that we'll get into. But like, obviously there's some super popular Beatles songs on here that everybody knows. And I'm a cliche guy sometimes. And like, I enjoyed a lot of those songs. And this album kind of takes you on a very interesting ride. It feels kind of all over the place, but in a cohesive way. Like it just is very different track to track, which I found interesting. Look, my main thing with the Beatles is, and my opinion on them has changed a number of times. My big thing is like, I personally, and you guys know my preference in music, I personally find it like I would never listen to the Beatles because to me, it's like every time I listen to a Beatles song, it's like I just want to go listen to a different rock band. Like I want to listen to a better rock band, obviously, because music, instruments, recording evolved over time, and it evolved to a space like in the 70s that I like a lot more with Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin and things of that nature. So there are times where I get a little bored listening to them. Now, I'm not going to take away from what they did and the fact that they are the Beatles, and a lot of this music now and even in the 70s, 80s, 90s was inspired by them, and you have to give them credit where it is due. But it's just not something that I personally enjoy a ton, and people feel that way about a lot of bands that I listen to. The Grateful Dead, a lot of people call them, like they use the same type of description, and they call Dead and Company Dead and Slow instead of Dead and Co. And so I get it, it's just a personal preference thing, but I do, I went into it and I tried to listen to it unbiasedly. And there were moments that I liked about it. I broke it up. Like I didn't listen to it in one setting. I did at the gym today with my new Bose headphones. Shout out Amanda. I listened to some more.
Shout out Bose.
Yeah, that's what
shout out Bose. True.
Sponsor us, Bose. Mine are about to fall off.
So. Please. So yeah, it was nice to get like that nice crisp Bose sound to listen to this album, you know. And
Like there's just not much better than Bose.
there really isn't better than Bose. And while we're on the topic, Bose Ultra Comfort. So yeah, that was kind of my take upon Listen. So is that about what you expected, Trey, or did you expect a more harsh opinion?
Your opinion has changed over time, as
He's
you've
getting
said,
older,
and
right?
and I
Blake
and
is
I yeah, you're getting a little older, and your back's going to start to hurt soon. That's okay.
True.
I'm glad that you just have the opinion now that you understand the contributions they've made to music. I remember at one point in time, I think your dislike for their sound overwrote your logical opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that
And I'm
doesn't
glad
really
that we've
sound
got.
like me, but
Yeah,
maybe
no, you're right. That doesn't sound like
I
you at
could have
all.
seen that
Yeah.
possibly happening, but I can't say for sure.
Yeah, I can't say for certain, but no, I do. That's a little better than I thought. So,
Okay.
without further ado, why don't we hop right into the record?
All
Blake,
right.
why don't you give us your top three first?
Okay, I actually have a top four. I have an
Oh,
honorable mention here. So look, like I said, a little cliche, but Eleanor Rigby, man. Look, I love this song. It's got such the beginning of this song is so angelic, in the violin or whatever string instrument they're playing with it, like the increasing tone they have there is just, it really wraps you in. And look, it's the most played song on the entire album, so that is very basic of me, but it's just objectively a good song, man. You can't say that it's not. It's fun. It's a bop. You're kind of bopping your head to it. Yeah, I like Eleanor Rigby a lot.
Great song.
Great song. And then getting a little, this one surprised me, but Yellow Submarine, which again is the second most played song on the album, but I like, which typically I didn't think I was gonna like this, but like the sounds they have going into the background, the water, the breeze that's happening, like whatever it is, and it is a little campy. I feel like Trey would say, like, that made Trey, you could tell me if that's the word you would use for this song on this album.
It is, yeah,
It's a little
probably.
campy, but it's, like I said, it's digestible. It's not too weird. It's like got great instrumentation. It's a happy song. Like, it's just overall very, very enjoyable experience for me. So that's my number two. Then going actually right into the next one, She Said, She Said. So love the guitar and She Said, She Said. Very, very nice. Kind of I don't know, more like electric rock vibes here, I guess you would say. It feels weird to say that in terms of talking about the Beatles, but that's what it feels like to me. It's more groovy, more beachy, more electric vibes. So I really like, just really what stuck out to me was the guitar and She Said, She Said. That kind of pulled me in. And then my fourth, or I would say honorable mention, for a lot of the same reasons, is Dr. Robert. So Dr. Robert is very fun song. Very I don't know, Trey, do you think this is like, does this feel like Beach Boys music to you? I don't listen to a lot of the Beach Boys, but Dr. Robert, I feel like kind of feels like a Beach Boy song. I could be way off base in that. I don't know.
No, you're pretty on base there. I mean, they were kind of rivals for a good reason, right? They made pretty similar music. Really, the Beach Boys were quite inspired by the Beatles, is what it really came down to. But then started trying to beat them as far as like record sales and whatnot go. So yeah, I mean, especially Dr. Robert. Dr. Robert, A Good Day Sunshine is sounds just like a Beach Boy song. Like Love You Too sounds like a Beach Boy song. So yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah, so I really loved the instrumentation and the guitar work in Dr. Robert. So that was a nice kind of pick me up towards the end of the album, where I was kind of like, all right, like getting towards the end and kind of ready to wrap this up. And then Dr. Robert came on. I was like, all right, I'm back in it. I'm feeling it. They just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in, you know? So those are my top four.
Nice.
Any thoughts on those, Trey? You think it's solid?
Yeah, that's really solid. I mean, Eleanor Rigby is an absolutely phenomenal song. It is just an achievement of instrumentation, and Paul McCartney and George Martin. So for those that don't know, George Martin is like the fifth unspoken Beatle. He's the one who recorded and produced all of their albums. And he's the one who composed a lot of like the bigger instrumentation parts. So things on like A Day in the Life in Sgt. Pepper's, or like Eleanor Rigby, the string section in Eleanor Rigby. That's all like George Martin's work. And then Paul McCartney, of course, they like kind of partnered on things like that. So with Revolver, what you have in a lot of ways is McCartney stepping up a little bit more than John Lennon as being like a creative control for the group. Whereas before, like Lennon kind of had a little bit more to say. Like the McCartney Lennon connection kind of started moving more towards the McCartney side when it came to instrumentation for Revolver, from my understanding. So yeah, Eleanor Rigby is phenomenal. Great pick there. Yellow Submarine, not quite my favorite.
That's fair.
But it's got value, and I'm interested to hear what your bottom ones are. But we can go over to Anthony for his top first.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So I'll start there with Yellow Submarine. It's at the top of my list, and this is why, like campy, I do think is an accurate way to describe it. Catchy, campy, very uplifting, but like I think we can all imagine ourselves hiking on LSD or not, just in nature, getting high off the earth, but like you can start singing that song and everyone's joining in, and it is just gonna be a good vibe. Think of like the scene from Peter Pan. The kids are all hiking and singing. Like they could just as well be singing Yellow Submarine, and I think that would it feels good. And another reason why this song I think is at the top of my list is what came after the fact. The album and the film that came with that song. That resonates with me big time, having watched it a lot and really like that kind of thought-provoking aspect of the Beatles. The Beatles are they're beyond music. When they came over, I mean, it was obviously a big pop wave that just, fandom out the roof, right? But from a creative standpoint, their music was it allowed them to explore other areas of creativity. I honestly don't know how much influence they had with the creation of the film, but the fact that it was made and the music that comes along with that really helps that song elevate to another level. Yeah, it's a really good sing-along track, I think. Number 2, I have Eleanor Rigby. The strings,
Nice.
just the cinematic aspect of that song is I love it. I love the story. It's just an interesting way to portray that song, and I love at the end some of the singing throughout this album is a turnoff for me, and it could just be just the way my ears are. But the way Eleanor Rigby is being sung, it's very like it's kind of building to a point, and there's a part at the end where they're singing in the round that I really enjoy. So that's number 2.
Anthony's like waiting for the drop for Eleanor Rigby. He's like, it's building. He's waiting for some drop. Never comes.
I'll say this. Let me say this too, because it's not really going to be affecting my bottom tracks, but the way some of these songs end is kind of like, like I want closure for these songs, but a lot of them don't have closure. They just kind of fade out, and then next song will pick up, which is an interesting, I think, production tactic. I think a lot of artists nowadays will do that with songs that are going to be expanded upon live. A lot of the Grateful Dead studio work is like that too, where it just kind of like ends and you're like, there's more to this song, or there could be more, or there could be closure to it. But yeah, a lot of the songs from the Beatles or from Revolver, I don't want to say a lot, some of them had that impact on me where like I want it to extend longer, I want it to build to a close, but it doesn't do that. But anyway, my number 3 track is Love You Too. It's the sitar track, it's Harrison, on full display, and it feels like it could be like a chanting kind of song. The way the way they're delivering the lyrics on that song, it feels very deliberate, but also very rhythmic in a way that just kind of makes sense to my ears. So I love that track. I got a couple of honorable mentions. Dr. Robert, I fucking love this song. Just not as much as the other ones, but it falls in the lane of Yellow Submarine with me, and Eleanor Rigby, where the lyrics can replay themselves in your head pretty consistently. And I think that's part of the psychedelic aspect of the Beatles, where like if you're going to get stuck in a loop and it happens to be We All Live in a Yellow Submarine, it's a pretty good place to be. So Dr. Robert, honorable mention. Last honorable mention is Tomorrow Never Knows. I don't like it as much as I like Love You Too, but I know there's a lot of recording experimentation, I guess you could say, with Tomorrow Never Knows, whether it's Paul's voice being spun around to sound like a seagull. And Trey, you might correct me on this, but is there something that's actually done with like a revolving microphone that's like only, is that this song? Do you know?
I don't
Does that
think
ring a
that's
bell?
this song. I think that's something that happens on Sergeant Pepper's.
Okay.
But Tomorrow Never Knows is the 4-track that's played backwards. So like
Okay. Yeah.
that sound, which I think is what you're thinking of as far as the like the record, you're thinking of the I forget what the name of the instrument is. It's like an amp that like
Yeah.
spins, and they put a microphone right up next to it.
And
So
it
as
only
it's
catches a
spun,
half.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they would like slow it down. But for Tomorrow Never Knows, yeah, they played things backwards.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. What do you got, Trey?
All right, so there's 14 top songs on this album. But as far as like the ones I wanted to talk about, so for Eleanor Rigby is amazing. I love that song. Like the storytelling in it's pretty dark,
Yeah.
and is sad in a lot of ways. It's a big step forward as far as like writing almost like an epic track. And it's only 2 minutes long, and kind of like what we were talking about yesterday with Tipper and whatnot. Like it feels a lot longer, right? Like it kind of is expanding time in a lot of ways as you listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll only do 3 though, just because that feels fair. Maybe throw in a few honorable mentions. She said is definitely up there for me. When I first discovered this album, I was in high school and like starting to experiment with different things. And so like I was really attracted, and I think this is a common youth experience. I was really attracted to songs that were about drugs. Like I wanted to hear what other people like. How is this experience that you're having? Like how is it similar to the experiences that I'm having? How can I like assimilate into it? Like what does all this shit mean that's like happening around me? And so she said is very much I think a psychedelic laden song. She said, I know what it's like to be dead. I know what it is to be sad. And she's making me feel like I've never been born. Like that's just this idea. I don't know. I'm not going to get into the specifics of that, but a lot of it's just dripping in psychedelia. And then my number one song on this album, one of my favorite songs of all time, is Tomorrow Never Knows. So Tomorrow Never Knows was written by McCartney and Lennon, primarily by Lennon. But the guitar work in it, the instrumentation, it's just absolutely phenomenal. I feel like this is a song that could come out today and people would like think that it, came out today. As far as like it being timeless, some of like the animal sounds that are sampled in the background, all of that type of stuff. That was something that like we hear it all the time now, right? But that's not that people didn't do shit like that back then. And imagining being like an 18-year-old kid in 1966 and popping this on my record player, like it would just absolutely blow my mind. Also, just as far as like the beginning of the Beatles bringing in kind of the hippie counterculture generation and some of their lyrics like speaking to that. Like before this album, a lot of their lyrics were just love songs, which I love a good love song. Blake loves a good love song. Anthony, you're okay on
True.
love songs. But just like these lyrics, like that love is all, that love is everyone. It is knowing that ignorance and hate may mourn the dead. It is believing, but listen to the color of your dream. That's beautiful, and like prophetic, and in a lot of ways, wasn't in things that people were talking about at the time, especially people that were under these. Like you talked earlier about the Beatles being such a big thing, like coming over to the U.S. and playing on the Ed Sullivan Show and all of that type of stuff, like causing some controversy, sure, but John Lennon talked about how he's bigger than Jesus, which Blake, you should love that.
Very cool.
Yeah, very cool. And then people fucking hating him for it. And that's not even what he was really saying either. He was like, it feels like the Beatles are bigger than Jesus, is what he was essentially saying. Like,
Right.
Yeah, but that doesn't. But I can't make an argument about that, so I have to cherry pick exactly what the quote was, and then I can be mad about it.
Right. That's a reasonable and logical thing to do. But yeah, so like you got to realize the pressure that these 4 lads from Liverpool were under, and how shortly they had been a band, and like they're already making huge cultural leaps in 3 months. Like in the time that it's taken me to go see 6 Pretty Light shows. These guys fucking changed the history of rock and roll. And that is what it is. It's rock and roll. So, a couple other honorable mentions. I'll try to limit this to 2. So I'm trying to think of ones you haven't talked about. And Your Bird Can Sing. I love this song. I think the guitar work in it's great. George Harrison's my favorite Beatle. And the guitar work in this is great. Love You Too. I think you talked about that actually already with the sitar, but George Harrison actually wrote this track. Love You Too is phenomenal. Yeah, let's just stop there. That seems like a good one.
Ringo is my favorite Beatle.
So that's fair. Ringo's a fucking great guy.
Well, Trey, give us the breakdown of who does what in the Beatles.
Okay, yeah. So Paul McCartney plays bass and sings. John Lennon plays rhythm guitar and sings. George Harrison plays lead guitar and sings occasionally. And Ringo Starr, he plays drums very well, and he sings, and he writes some songs every now and again. And he's just like the homie. He's the Michael Minner of the Beatles. Like he's just there to vibe.
He's there,
he's there. He's vibing. Everybody loves having him around. So Ringo Starr was the first one to ever quit the Beatles. Not during their big breakup, but to ever like actually quit. And he quit for like a 2-week period of time. And they sent him a telegram. They were like, "Dude, we love you. Like you have to come back." Like blah blah blah. And he came back during the get back sessions.
My dad says that like he gets really upset about anything like Beatles related because he says that Paul McCartney remembers the Beatles how he wants to remember them, and now that George and John are dead, he said Paul remembers it how he wants to remember it, and Ringo was so drunk the entire time that he doesn't remember anything accurately. So anything that like comes from it is he's like, none of this can't be true, which I don't know if that's a fact or not, but I just think it's really funny.
Well, it's a good thing there were millions and millions and millions of people to witness everything that had to do with the Beatles, so it doesn't really matter all too much how two people remember it.
Yeah,
all kinds of documentarians and that type of stuff too, and film and albums and recording. So
yeah. Well, I think that, Ringo should, I think Ringo deserves more credit. It's tough playing a 3-piece drum set, and he did it really well. So
he did.
Give his credit.
He played that 5-piece pretty well. No, Ringo's cool, man. Ringo, you like Yellow Submarine. Ringo didn't write it, but I bet he vibed on it really hard.
Yeah, true. Very true.
Played that really good.
All right, so getting into bottom tracks, first off, I gotta say this. Taxman, listen, this corny 3rd grade interpretation of how taxes work, and let me tell you something, you can't come at me dropping a song called Taxman, me, a known and vocal communist, telling me that taxes are bad. I'm not gonna let that happen. I'm not gonna let that slide. So for that alone, not a fan of this song. I just didn't like that intro. I was like, all right, man, we're getting a little into MAGA territory here. Like, I thought I was gonna, like, I thought maybe if I go buy Don't Tread on Me flag, that maybe I would vibe with it better. So all in all, not a great song to me. And then I'm sorry guys, but I know you guys both mentioned these, but Love You Too and Good Day Sunshine, just not for me. And I don't listen to the Beach Boys in the same fashion that I don't listen to the Beatles. And if you're telling me this is like this sounds like Beach Boys songs, then that kind of tracks. But I don't know. I just found them. I don't know what they kind of made me like uncomfortable. I don't really know how to put it into words. I just didn't enjoy them. I found them kind of corny, and like I didn't love the singing or the rhythm on either one of these songs. And they both they have a very similar feel to them, a very similar kind of instrumentation to them, and I don't know, just not my type of Beatles song, I guess. I think I'm learning through Revolver what my type of Beatles song is and what my type of Beatles song is not. So those two, yeah, true. It was a learning process.
I was like, hey, you're going to like some of this. Now, the songs you listed make a lot of sense for you and other people not to like. They're a little, and I'll say it for you, they're a little campy. Some of them can definitely be a little campy.
Yeah.
For me, it's a nostalgia thing, but like, I understand if you didn't grow up listening to that type of thing, like you're probably not going to like it. It's a little goofy.
Right. It's kind of, it's like jarring is kind of the word for me. Like in terms of the other parts of the album.
Scared of it, honestly.
Yeah, something about the vibe did not match my freak at all. So did not like that. But yeah, those are really the only ones I had. I mean, there are other there's a lot of tracks in here, right? I have 4 on my top, 3 on my bottom, and there's a lot of tracks in the album, and they're all short, right? But there's a lot that falls somewhere in between. I don't love them, I don't hate them. I think if someone put them on, I wouldn't be like, please turn this off. I would kind of just let it do its thing, But I think that's I being completely honest, when I went into the album, I was like, I'm gonna hate this, but I'm gonna do it. And if I have only bottom tracks, I'll just have to deal with the hate I get from Trey and Anthony for this. But that was not the case. I enjoyed it more than I expected. But there's a lot of meh, to me. But there's still, enough good that I'm glad that we did it. I'm glad we listened to it. So, but Anthony, what do you got?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good way to kind of break down an album like this. First listen through, I'm marking tracks that I really like. And second listen through, I'm like, okay, now I'm kind of asterisks next to some tracks that I'm kind of indifferent on, and then finding out those tracks that really kind of rub me the wrong way. So no particular order. These are the tracks that I have as bottom. I don't hate them. There are just points and parts of them that I'm just not giant fans of. So Trey, this is one of yours, and Blake, this was one of yours. She Said, She Said. I enjoy a lot of aspects of this track, okay? But there was something that I couldn't shake, and I don't know if there's a frequency in the background or if it was just the method I was listening to it on, but there was something in that track that I couldn't just shake. So for whatever reason, She Said, She Said is on there. What's it called? And Your Bird Can Sing, only because it's just not my flavor of Beatles tracks. I'm not into the I don't know, variety guitar kind of vibe that it gives me. I don't know. So I had to pass on And Your Bird Can Sing. And I had to include a third track just to keep with consistency. This came from my little indifferent set of tracks. I'm Only Sleeping. Only because I like the other ones more from my little indifferent selection. So, yeah, so try to make sense of it all, But I think when you turn on a Beatles record, you're listening to a Beatles record, and they have a distinct way of presenting music to you. And from Revolver on, you're gonna get things that startle you. Like Paul McCartney's voice in Tomorrow Never Knows, that seagull hybrid thing, that can scare the shit out of you, right? Until you realize what it is, and then it's kind of ingenious when you look at it that way. So I think a lot of their techniques on the front end can be like, what are they doing here? Or are they just trying to turn another pop record? But when you start to dig deeper into writing credits and instrumental credits and arrangements and techniques and experimentation, it grows with appreciation.
That seagull thing is kind of like that one time you listened to that one Tool song at night when you were walking your dog, or you're outside or whatever, and it scared you, so you turned it off.
That's what I mean. So there can be a moment like that just kind of jump scares you, right? And you're like, all right, this is it's hard to shake things like that, especially when you can press repeat and play it again, and it's still there. It's not going away. It's not your imagination.
Trey, did you have any bottom tracks? You can skip it if you want to. We'll give you a pass on this one.
No, hold on one second. I expected Blake to hurt me, and Blake didn't. Blake surprised me, but I did not expect Anthony to cut me to my rib bones. She said, she
shocking turn of events.
Yeah, shocker. I get it, but I don't. But I do. No, I don't really have any bottom tracks. I don't particularly love Yellow Submarine, but I think it's really fun. And I think that it brings people in probably that wouldn't listen to something like this to begin with. And it gives them a respite from some of the serious nature of the rest of the record. So I think that's fun. Also, it's definitely about being goofy and being high. And, when you have one of those stupid jokes between a few people that you can't quit laughing about for an hour, and then you lay on a deck and you all start speaking to each other within your minds and not having to say any words out loud or something like that.
I've heard that happens.
So Yellow Submarine could be kind of crazy. But I want to use my time for bottom tracks to talk about the album artwork actually. So if you go back, and if you're in Spotify, I would invite you to do this now.
Hang on, I'll pull it up. You can keep talking.
I'll keep talking. Go and look at the albums before Revolver. So you have Please Please Me, you have With the Beatles, A Hard Day's Night,
Beatles for Sale,
Help is not an actual album. And then you have Rubber Soul, right? So if you look at these records,
Can't see it super well, but there you go.
Yeah. So if you look at these records, you can all see all four of the Beatles. They're dressed kind of nicely, typically speaking, and they're all kind of it's pretty normal looking, right? Rubber Soul looks a little stretched. That's because they had started smoking marijuana. But if you look at Revolver, this album art is absolutely fucking nuts. It's like a pencil drawing, and with like real people like superimposed in between the four heads of the Beatles. You have Ringo. You have George looking right at you. You have Ringo looking up and to the left, or up and to the right. You have John looking over at Paul, and you have Paul staring off into the distance. So there's a fun conspiracy theory about this. And the conspiracy is that Paul actually died in the 3 months in between.
Yes, we've heard this. Nice.
Revolver, and that they had replaced Paul with, I forget what the person's name is now. But they had replaced Paul with a lookalike, and that's why this album is like this, because you can't see Paul looking right at you. He's looking away, or this album art, rather, is looking away from you. I think that's entirely bullshit, but I think it's still fun to talk about. And this album art is just absolutely cool. It's iconic. It's something that if you'd have seen in the 60s in a record store, you'd have been like, what the flying fuck is this? And you'd have bought it, and you'd gone home and you had your fucking mind blown. So, just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that.
Very cool.
So, Trey, who is if you're looking at the album in the top right, so adjacent to Paul, who is that?
John Lennon.
John Lennon. So I'm just looking at it now, and I see John Lennon. His ear is the only like realistic ear too. So I don't know. You can probably get lost in this album just pulling out details and nuanced things. And somebody's sitting on his ear too, or something.
Yeah. I think that conspiracy also talks about like how Eleanor Rigby, because Eleanor Rigby, like she died, and Father McKenzie's like presiding over her funeral. And I think that album, the conspiracy implies that like Paul actually is the one who died, and like the reason that you're like not hearing any of Father McKenzie's sermons is because like you wouldn't hear him because it's a cover up. I don't think any of that's true. Just for the record.
Interesting. I think it's cool. And you know what? I think it is true. So
there it is.
So before we get into rides or dies or album rankings or anything, I just want to say in terms of Trey, you know, my big issue with the Beatles is always that whenever you bring up the best bands of all time or the most influential bands of all time, the immediate go-to is the Beatles. The Beatles. I don't listen to them, but the Beatles, you know, or I do listen to them. I listen to a lot of other bands, but it's the Beatles.
I was waiting on this rant. I knew you could.
No, it's not a rant. It's not a rant. It's not a rant. You said earlier they're probably one of the top 3 greatest bands of all time is what you said. You didn't say they're the greatest, which I appreciate. But in terms of influence, the reason it always bothered me was because I found bands like Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin and Nirvana equally, if not more, inspirational for the direction of music or rock music as a whole. Do you still view the Beatles as the most inspirational band of all time, or do you think, they're in the top 3 most inspirational bands?
I would say one of, for sure.
Okay.
I would say one of, but I would say they're the very first to have the biggest touch on a high number of people.
I think that is a very mature, nuanced
take.
Like
I've always said something to that effect. But as we get older, Blake, and you're learning this because you are getting older.
Unfortunately,
as we get older, we understand, that maybe everything's not as black and white. And, I would say they are probably the most, but there's no real way to quantify that,
Yeah.
And I think all the bands that you just listed were highly influenced by the Beatles. And that was always been, in our argument, that's always been where I've gone. It's like, yeah, I agree with you that Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and Nirvana are like super influential, but all of those guys looked at the Beatles first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Kind of a who came first kind of situation too.
Yeah, the Beatles looked at other people first as well. The Beatles were inspired by people, but that's the beautiful thing about music, right? It's just this massive conversation that transcends decades and death and life and love and the pursuit of happiness and Will Smith.
And that's what That's what Totally Biased Music is all about. You know, and Trey, you say things aren't black and white, but isn't it way more fun to just pretend that they are and just take a hard line stance and not budge on that whatsoever? Like,
yeah,
and just
but as you get older, once again, you're gonna learn that like it's not as fun anymore. You get tired of arguing with people.
it does
I saw
get
something
exhausting.
on Facebook earlier from my old wrestling coach's wife, some just wild political opinion, and I wanted to comment on it so bad, and then I remembered, I was like,
It's
I
not
don't
worth
care
it
anymore.
Yeah,
It's not worth
it. I'm a sports guy now.
I
That's
haven't
all
got
I
a
care
Facebook
about.
argument in years, you know.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know why I'm still on that platform. So,
well, let's get into album. Well, actually, hang on. I'll pull up album rankings. If Anthony, you want to say any last, any final words or anything while I pull this up before we get into album rankings, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Beatles are an interesting, nuanced band. You know, I think because there wasn't that much before them. I mean, obviously there's some like very fundamental musical elements to their early songs, you know, or their early albums, but like this turning point, I don't know if this is a advocacy for LSD, and it's really not, because it's not for everyone, but it is interesting how you can take a pop band or a pop band can start experimenting with things musically and, you know, chemically, and you start to get these nuanced things to where like the Revolver, I don't think Revolver is the greatest album of all time, but from an influential standpoint, it shows people what could be done. And then ideas start to go. And I think that is so contagious from an artistic standpoint. You know, you do something, people get an idea, they try something, and then experimentation continues. So like this album is super necessary for where we are now, right? And we may never be able to follow the exact trail it took, but the fact is, you know, the Beatles' outreach was bigger than anybody, bigger than Jesus, you know, in the 60s. So like again, they're a very necessary band, like them or hate them, their influence you.
I think that while Totally Biased Music is not bigger than Jesus, I think we are more important than Jesus. So that's something. So I'm kind of
say that we're vibier than
definitely better vibes.
He's a pretty vibey guy.
Yeah, true.
Actual individual,
kind of socialist. I think his followers are which is our problem too. We have rabid followers that don't really understand our messaging. You know, you
can't even go to the airport now.
Right? Yeah, literally, I got swamped in the airport.
All right, so Rolling Stone,
my foot-long sandwich at 4 a.m. like a sociopath by myself.
Rolling Stone doesn't have an actual ranking, but they have it on the top 500 greatest albums of all time. I'll give you guys a range. It's between 1 and 200. What do you think?
That's such a shitty range. You get 500, you cut it not even in half.
First off, that is definitely in half. Not in half.
Oh, you're right.
150.
Damn it! I'm never gonna get into that.
So, where do you guys think they put it?
Trey, would you like to go first?
I'm gonna guess 47.
Okay. I was gonna say 30, so we'll go 33.
33. Okay, it is number 11, and it says. Following the groundbreaking album Rubber Soul, the Beatles, along with their longtime producer George Martin, took it to the next level. The band had made the conscious decision to never tour again, thus there was no worry about how they'd recreate the songs live, enhancing the studio's role in their music. And then Pitchfork, out of 10, what do you guys think they ranked it?
They probably gave it like a 9.
Yeah, I'll say 8.
10. They gave it a perfect 10. Pitchfork believes it's the perfect album.
Wow.
And
Trey,
I don't know,
does that change your opinion on Pitchfork?
Yeah, if you agree with Pitchfork, I don't know, it might be a little dangerous.
10 out of 10. That's the first time we've definitely heard you doing this.
I think this is arguably probably one of the best albums we've ever reviewed on this podcast, for certain.
Okay, that's
we
fair.
only review good ones, so like there's a lot of competition.
Yeah, there's a lot of competition.
Yeah, that's true. Anthony, what is your rating?
So I give this a solid 8 out of 10. I did not grow up with this album, so I've only spent, you know, a handful of years with them. But I definitely appreciate it for what it is, and it's re-listenable. You know, I listen to it every time all the way through and just let it go. And I mean, it's very digestible. And again, I think it starts to ingrain itself in you over time. So I could see how people who have lived with this really deep appreciation for it. But 8 out of 10.
Respect that. Nice. What's yours?
I'm gonna give it a 6.75.
That
Because
is so much better than I expected.
as I said earlier, 4 really good songs that I really, really enjoy and will be revisiting on a probably regular basis. 3 songs I really do not enjoy, and then a handful of other songs that are somewhere in the land in between. So I think that's a fair rating. But taking into account the songs that I like, the influence of the album itself, the album artwork is fucking sick. So we got to take all that into account. So 6.75 final answer.
Blake, old age looks good on you.
Yeah,
it really does. Yeah.
Getting much wiser.
I mean, apart from the hairline, everything else is
I
going
didn't
great.
even notice. Just wear the hat.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's a 10 out of 10 for sure.
Nice.
Rolling Stone and Pitchfork got it right. So, yeah, absolutely love this. I will probably listen to this album on the day that I die. Hopefully, one day, at the ripe old age of 647 on my own private island. Exactly how George Harrison would have wanted it, as he sang about in Taxman.
Yeah.
So
I read a story recently about it was on Reddit about a guy who said that his uncle passed away in a rocking chair with a beer in his hand, watching his kids play like soccer or something, and he was like, he died doing what he loved, didn't even spill the beer. That's how Trey's gonna go out. Listening
I
to
love that
Revolver
uncle.
on the rock.
That's my new hero.
Yeah, and just
that's my new hero.
Not a drop.
All right, so that was Revolver. If you haven't listened, go listen with an open mind. Even if you're a Beatles, historic Beatles hater, go give it a shot and tell us what you think. All right, so let's get into Rise or Dies. Trey, you can lead us off. What do you got?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I was gonna have to go grab my phone because I can't remember exactly what I sent, but I remember what the song sounds like because I got it. Someone sent it to me yesterday. I was like, "This is really cool. I want to talk about this on the podcast," and I sent it right in. So if you could tell me the name of the song that I sent,
it is. You should not be doing that.
Yeah, that's right. You should not be doing
looking
that.
up your Ride or Die as we're live.
By Emil and the Sniffers.
So,
Emil and the Sniffers.
First off, love the band name.
Yeah.
Same.
Second off,
so like a reason why it's amyl nitrate. Amyl nitrate are the old poppers people used to do back in the days. Amyl and the Sniffers.
I actually tried poppers for the very first time last year on Pretty Lights tour. Great experience. Interesting.
Very cool.
Yeah, super tight. So anyway, so I selected this song. A friend of mine sent this to me, and he was like, "You got to check out this punk song." And I was like, "Hell yeah, let's do it." And I listened to it, and I was like, "This song's fucking awesome." I was like, "I wonder what the boys would think about this," because like I know, as you say, you like that heavy shit, and this feels pretty heavy at times, but it's also got this like kind of old, like early '90s, late '80s, like beginning of punk music. So thoughts on You Should Not Be Doing That.
So I gotta say, it's a hard rides for me. I thought it was fucking awesome. I thought it was super weird. Also, it reminded me of I don't know if you guys have ever listened to K-Flay. K-Flay has like, I don't know what her genre would be. I mean, I guess you would categorize it as pop music, but she has songs with Tom Morello. She has a wide variety of the type of music she makes. Like sometimes it sounds her voice sounds very similar to this, and some of her music sounds very similar to this. And I love K-Flay. So that took me down a little K-Flay avenue. So I got to listen to her a little bit more. But yeah, this is a cool vibe, man. I love her voice. It's kind of jarring, but in a good way. Like it just it's very like kind of strange, and you can't really find the tempo or what direction the song's going. But you're like, fuck it, I'm in it for the ride. So yeah, hard rides for me. Good choice.
Thanks. I'm glad you like it.
Anthony?
So the band name Gets a Rides for sure. Song Gets a Dies for me, really just because it is. I like her voice, and I want to hear it in a different direction. I'm not a huge punk music fan, so that's really why it gets a dies from me. But you put them on my radar, so we'll see where it goes.
Cool,
nice. Anthony, what do you got? Oh, sorry, Trey, you want to tell us something?
Oh yeah, I just want to talk about the lyrics of this, where she's just talking about how she's like out like fucking around and like banging a bunch of people, and like whatever boy toy that she's like fucking with is just like, you shouldn't be doing that. And she's like, I don't give a fuck.
Respect.
Yeah, I think it's sick.
It's
Respect.
this is fairly new. It's
Yeah,
a
it came out.
new.
I think it came out. Ryan Stanhope sent me this song. Shout out Ryan Stanhope.
Oh yeah,
He sent it to me. But yeah, it came out this year.
gotcha.
Nice.
Anyway.
All right, so my ride or die is a band. I'm surprised. Well, I guess I'm not really surprised that they haven't been on the podcast yet. They're not really known for studio work, but more so the live experience. We've all been. Trey, you've been to Electric Forest, right? Have you?
I've not, but y'all two have been.
Yeah, wasn't sure if all of us had. But String Cheese Incident, well-known band, resonating up in Rothbury, Michigan. But I really enjoy their sound live. I don't listen to a lot of their studio work, but this song in particular does make it to my eardrums every now and then. The song is called Sirens. So I want to see what you guys think about this. Like, what you got?
So look, I'll say I have seen Cheese a lot. I really like Cheese. I really like how much Cheese has changed over the years. And a lot of their diehard fans do not like that, especially the early fans. I'm sure Trey could also shed light on this, but they're very much a folk band, like folkish band at the beginning, and then they kind of turned into a rock band, sort of, and then you have the Iodo aspects of it now, where it's kind of electronic-y. So they've evolved a lot, and their shows are always very unique when I see them. Very different, great live experience, great live show. I love seeing them every time I see them. And I came into Cheese very late, so I have no preference of, oh, I don't want to hear this, I do want to hear this. Like, I'm just there to buy. I love Iodo. I love the Iodo sections when they sometimes when I saw him at Forest one year. I believe it was the year that we went, Anthony, but there was a moment where the band members left and it was just Iodo on stage and they were doing weird electronic shit, and I thought it was really fucking cool. And so, like, I love Cheese. I love this song. It's a hard rides for me. And yeah, they're very, very different band. I knew a girl I used to work with that she followed Cheese like a lot of our friends follow Pretty Lights or Fish or Dead. Like, she had seen them a number of times, and she had a playlist called More Cheese Please that was like 300 Cheese songs, and I used to just throw it on and jam and listen to how their live shows change from time to time. And there's an Electric Forest set not too long ago where they played like an hour and a half Rosie, which I thought was fucking cool as shit. I know some people were really upset about it. I thought it was awesome. So yeah, very cool, very, very hard rides. I'm glad you brought it. Trey, what do you think?
First off, this is the first time I think I've ever heard the song.
Really?
As a studio version. Yeah. I don't think I've ever listened to it. But it's an absolute staple of their repertoire. And, it's fucking impossible to have a bad time at String Cheese Incident show. It just is. They're a happy band. They're a lot of fun. They transcend that occasionally where, like, they're not just fun. They're really, really serious musicians. Kyle Hollingsworth, their keyboard player, is fucking nuts good at playing keys. And Bill Nurse's a great guitar player, and Kane can play the shit out of a mandolin, and they're great. Definitely hard rides. All respect to String Cheese Incident. If you don't like String Cheese Incident, you just don't like having fun.
True.
That's just all it comes down to. You just don't like having fun.
You just never seen them.
Yeah. Or you just never seen them. So, I was lucky enough. I did like a 3-night Red Rocks run with them, and they did Keller Williams has an album called Breathe, which would be a good album to bring to that would probably be, if I was gonna bring a String Cheese Incident album to the podcast, it would be that one, because they are the backing band for the whole record, so it's like a collab album. But they did that in total, and it was a blast. So yeah, love Cheese. Hard rides. Nice. Blake?
So I want to transport you guys back in time real quick. So we're going back to 2008, and let me tell you something. There was an era, for those that were not in their early teens or teenage years around this time, there was a time where there was not a song in existence, I think, for 2 years that did not have Lil Wayne on it. I think there's
that is true.
I think there's a Fish song out there with Lil Wayne. I think there's a Grateful Dead song out there with Lil Wayne. Like, he was on just everything. You couldn't listen to a song without Lil Wayne. So I wanted to transport us back to 2008 and pick Let It Rock by Kevin Rudolph and Lil Wayne. One, because just absolute time portal, absolute banger for me, but also, like, I need people to realize that we're not there to witness this as us three were, because we're all big Lil Wayne fans. There was an era, I don't care how big Drake is now, how big Eminem was back in the early 2000s, this man Lil Wayne saved hip-hop music with how popular he was. He was the household name. He was the hip hop guy, and it was such a good time with so many classic, just mediocre songs where Lil Wayne comes in and makes it an amazing song, which is what he does in this song. So it's very campy, very 2008, but man, the Lil Wayne verse is just classic. So I had to pick that. Anthony, what do you think? You're shaking your head.
I'm shaking my head only because you could have picked any other featuring track from 2008.
Any other song, I thought the
would have
same
been
thing.
on board because I hate this song and I love Lil Wayne. I don't know if it was just shoved down my throat or it's just
That's what it was.
too
It was
poppy,
played everywhere,
everywhere,
dude.
where I was like, oh god, Planet Rock, and I love Wayne, but like it was just too much for me. And I hate to do it on your birthday, but like this song dies unfortunately. But
Damn.
Wayne and Blake together can ride off into the sunset. I'm down for that.
Hopefully.
Kevin Rudolph can hop off the bus. He's gone.
Here's the thing about this song: the Kevin Rudolph part is so bad.
Yeah.
But damn, that Wayne verse is hot as shit, dude. Like it's just is. Like, what's that line? It's like, he's like, I'm in here like, bitch, what's up? Mechanic me, I can fix you up, I can fuck you up, I can fuck you down, shawty, we can go wherever, just pick a town. Bars.
Oh shit,
Bars. Here's okay. I would have to give it a dies, but this is the only reason why. It's not. It has nothing to do with the song. It has to do with this song probably made Lil Wayne make that rock album,
which
Rebirth. Thank you. And that whole album is an insult to everything that man.
Rebirth has some gems on it. Rebirth has some gems on it.
I pulled up Rebirth as you were talking about it because I'm like, when did that come out? Because I was going to say
actually,
you could have.
Rebirth is terrible. I'm not. I mean, Drop the World's fine. But
Knockout. There's some
chorus is terrible. I'm gonna pick the world up and I'm gonna drop it on your fucking head. Yeah. I'm gonna come back on this because I've been on the fence about if I was gonna give this a rise or dies because like Wayne's World, Planet Rock, like come on, dude, that shit's fire. I'm gonna change it back. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna give you a rise. It's your birthday.
And thank you. Yeah. Thank you. And also there's a Kevin Rudolph song on Rebirth, One Way Trip. Great song.
Great song. Terrible. What even is this man doing, you think?
Kevin Rudolph? I have no idea.
Like, what does
Probably
he do
nothing.
Now?
Probably
he was
nothing.
signed to Cash Money.
Yeah, nice.
Sick.
I also love when Wayne comes back in the song and he says, "I'm back like I forgot something. I'm something." So good, dude. Okay, so Anthony, you picked Dewey Cox or Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox Story. So tell us why you picked that. Give us a little intro.
So I didn't know this was going to be your birthday episode, but I'm pretty glad that it worked out this way because talking about biopics and having so many, like this is the culmination of all of them, even before all these unnecessary ones had to come out. But from a comedy standpoint, this movie is fucking hilarious. From a reference standpoint, it hits everything. I mean, it was a banger back then. It's a banger now. We used to watch it regularly.
So when did it come out?
2007. So
oh damn, okay.
And I'm surprised had you even heard of it before?
No.
See, that's amazing because like this is quality comedy that I'm hoping resonates with you. But like the fact that this goes under the radar is just insane because of the sheer amount of musical references. The songs are great, like throughout this album. I think it was nominated for a Grammy. The soundtrack was, but like again, from just everything encapsulated into film form, I think this is just something that's necessary to be watched and experienced because there's some bangers in here.
I have to tell you, so apart from my hatred for this biopic trend that is happening, and now Trey, I think, is a little more on board now that he's seeing Steve Harvey and Ronald Reagan biopics. He's like, all right, maybe it's getting a little too far. This movie, I have not laughed this hard at a fucking movie in so long. I don't know if you guys noticed earlier, Anthony was going on a monologue and I was like laughing because I was thinking of lines from the movie because I watched it today. First off, hang on. Let me tell you some of the ones. I wrote down some of my favorite lines. Right off the bat, the first one is the doctor saying, "This is a particularly bad case of someone being cut in half." But then the line that really sent me over the edge to the point I had to pause the movie was when he says, "Your performance has shaken my faith in the Jewish people." And then Dewey says, "I'm willing to restore your faith in Judaism right now." Like, I cannot describe to you how fucking funny I found that. And then my last one I wrote down was when he meets Elvis, and Elvis is going, and he goes, "What the fuck did he just say?"
This
But
whole
just-
movie is laced with lines like that because the seriousness that these actors are playing is so spot on, and they all have bombs they're dropping.
And I just
Oh,
love
that's
that he
hilarious.
goes through like it's like first it's an Elvis movie, then it's a Johnny Cash movie, then it's a Bob Dylan movie, then it's like it's all these
Yeah.
artists, and like god damn dude, it was so funny. Like I'm so glad you picked it. I can't wait to watch it again and just pick up
Dude.
on the lines that I missed.
My favorite scene is when he's in rehab and he's with the nurse and he's
time?
like the last time he's like I'm too cold. He's like, he needs more blankets. And like, bring like, he's like, I'm bringing it up. And he's like, less blankets.
And then later he goes, when Jenna Fisher comes in, or Darlene, and she's like,
No,
trying-
Amy
like,
Adams.
"Are you ready?"
Amy Adams.
He's like, no, Jenna
No,
Fisher.
Jenna Fisher.
Mhm.
No,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, it is. Definitely is.
Do we hang on. Walk Hard cast. Oh, it is Jenna Fisher. I lied.
Those two
All right,
guys-
sorry,
I
continue.
knew for a fact I wasn't going to bullshit.
There was a he says something to her like, Darlene, these blankets saved my life, you know. And he just like this
Yeah.
still
It's like a little
harping on the
callback.
blankets. Mhm. Yeah, but the lines in this movie never get old, and I probably haven't watched this movie in at least 10 years, but like watched it probably 100 times within 3 years, you know. And it's like they never get old. Like I said, the music's great, and you will keep finding little nuanced things that will make you just crack the fuck up.
It was
But-
so good.
The Take My Hand song is like clearly about hand jobs is like the funniest shit.
Or when he's singing like Bob Dylan, and he's just like
About the
rest of
midgets?
it, yeah. Oh God, let me hold you, little man. Pretend you're flying in space. You know, I mean, like you could just listen to that. We could do that album one day. I mean, it's just it's very good.
Fuck, man. It was I'm so glad you picked it. And listen, like, if you're going to do a biopic, go watch that movie first and make sure none of the shit they're making fun of is in your fucking movie.
That's
Because,
honestly fair.
like, there's just so much of it. And I love with that scene when they're in the tour bus and that whole thing where she's like, she keeps making out with him and then slapping him in the face.
Yeah,
And then
oh, yeah.
they're in the tour bus and she's like, we can't have sex because we're not married. And then he gets married and she's like, you can't marry two people at once. He's like, what?
He goes, well, why not?
Never once pay for drugs.
Not
That's
once.
the line. Tim Meadows is like the secret like comedic like just relief throughout this film. that
Oh,
is
and
just
we didn't even
so
talk
good.
about when they meet the Beatles and
Oh, yeah.
what is
Oh,
it,
yeah.
Jack Black and who's
Justin
playing
Long,
Justin
it's
Long
George
is playing,
Harrison.
but I can't remember who's playing John.
I don't remember either.
Fuck, I don't remember who it is.
Schwartzman is playing Ringo. Jack Black, you said. Jack Black is Paul
Jack
McCartney.
Black's Paul, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
oh, jeez, that's gonna bother me now. All right, let's.
I
pull it
know.
up.
I'm trying to look it up because I know that Frankie Muniz is Buddy Holly, and he's like, my name's not Buddy Holly.
Oh God.
But
see.
that scene,
Paul
that
Rudd is
Yes.
Paul Rudd is
Yeah,
John
that's-
Lennon.
yes, Paul
Yeah.
Rudd. So that whole scene where he's
What's the
trying to
Beatles?
do the Liverpool accent and
Liverpool.
like he's just being so dramatic with it, and like that whole scene is it really had me in stitches. So great pick, Anthony.
Yeah,
Hell yeah.
excellent pick.
Hell yeah! So glad you loved it. So glad you loved it.
All right, so
All right.
next week I'm album Trey, your movie, is that correct?
I didn't
Yes.
remember that.
Yeah, Trey, you got to
Um,
pick a movie.
I gotta pick a movie right
But
now.
let Blake pick an album first while you're thinking on it.
Yeah.
So-
Fuck.
So I thought about doing this. Last week, but we or 2 weeks ago or however many weeks ago. But we tabled it for Post Malone, so we're gonna do 2001 by Dr. Dre.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
So very excited for that one.
All right. I don't really have a movie ready to go right this moment. But what I can do is pick one shortly, and then we can update our followers on our socials.
You can post it on.
I thought that it was not my pick. I've been a little swirled the last couple weeks.
Anthony drew a graph and everything. He drew like on a piece of paper.
He did. I kind of want to do Alien Romulus, honestly.
Yes, please.
Like, I know we just did an
seen
Alien movie. No, but I want to go see it like soon. So that'll make me go see it. A and B.
I think we should do it. And then we can.
I know we just did an Alien movie, so that feels a little stupid.
But like if you're still in chronological order of the lore of Alien.
True.
So, like,
and I've watched
Romulus,
almost all of them.
Yeah, I think we should. I think we should do Romulus, and then we can talk about Romulus, and then we can obviously bring up the other movies as well. I'm down with it if you are.
Cool. Yeah, because I've watched Alien, Aliens, Prometheus, Covenant.
Oh wow! Way ahead of me.
I've watched all those. I'm not watching Alien 3 because apparently it's bad, and I'm not going to rewatch Alien vs Predator.
Yeah, so now is really the perfect time to watch Romulus, actually, like chronologically.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's pull the trigger. I also wanted to make a recommendation. I know this is something we did in the past where we talked about a TV show week over week.
Yes.
And we can talk about this more off air maybe. But the Penguin premieres next week on next Thursday.
Nice.
The new
Colin
Batman
Farrell
show. And I think we all enjoyed the Batman a lot.
Yep.
And this show looks really good. So if y'all be interested in watching that week over week, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. I'll
give you a rec too if you haven't watched it. Tires, Shane Gillis's show.
Yeah,
fucking hilarious. It's very digestible. Very much worth watching.
Yeah.
You'll dig it, Blake.
Fuck yeah! All right, so next week, 2001 by Dr. Dre and Alien Romulus. Listen, watch if you haven't already, guys. Great episode, a lot of fun. Glad we did a Beatles album finally. Long overdue.
Wow,
so
that means so much. Hey, listen, Blake. Before we go, I got a song for you. All right.
All right.
They say it's your birthday. Happy birthday. They say it's your birthday. Happy birthday. Na 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 na. Everyone was close on this.